Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Awakened Souls podcast. I'm your host, Devin Brown, a Kundalini activator, spiritual guide, mentor, and hopefully just a great source of entertainment for you. Let's get ready to dive in. Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. So last week, we talked about imposter syndrome and how to deal with it and what to do when it's coming your way. And I did share a little, hint on what we were going to be discussing today. And today we're going to be talking about embracing your unordinary or your weird as extraordinary or extraordinary or extraordinary, however you want to say that. But truly, in all things, when you begin to embrace your weirdness and your eclecticness or your goofiness, imposter syndrome will come. So that's why these two are going back to back. That is what we are talking about. So if you did not listen to the imposter syndrome episode, that's totally fine. But maybe after this, if this speaks to you a little bit and maybe you begin to embrace and love yourself on a deeper, tangible level, and you begin to notice some feelings of anxiety, some feelings of not enoughness, or maybe some feelings of too muchness, go back and listen to that imposter syndrome episode, and it's going to help you a lot. That being said, we're going to go ahead and dive in. So every single one of us are unique. Every single one of us has a beautiful blueprint of soul essence of our highest selves here in this physical, tangible form. But there's a lot of us that have gone through this conditioning pattern. Like, I'm just going to give an example. You're a kid. You talk too much. Be quiet. Sit up straight. Yes, sir. No, ma'am. Etc. Like, you have to have your room perfectly clean. Make your bed. Or maybe the opposite. Do whatever you want. No structure. No boundaries. Etc. Like, we kind of end up taking on a little bit of the essence of who we were surrounded with and who was the example for us. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee real quick. So that being said, when we begin to embrace and learn how to embrace our weirdness or what we consider to be weird, and we begin to look at that and be like, I like this about myself. Your people are going to come. The people who see you for who you are and love you for who you are and want to be around you, that understand or maybe don't understand but don't judge, are going to be brought into your life. I am going to be using a personal story for this. So for those of you who have not listened from the very beginning, this podcast has been through some crazy up and downs when it comes to my own emotional journey, my own growth, my own transitions, my happiness, like all of this stuff. And a big portion and a big change in this has been me embracing myself, me accepting my weirdness as something that isn't too much. I am diagnosed with ADHD, like a lot of us that listen to this podcast, but that is because we are spiritually gifted. We are neurodivergent, and there is a very big difference. And I'm not talking about just people with ADHD. I'm talking about anyone who has neurodivergence. I'm even talking about people who would be diagnosed as schizophrenic, where really they have spiritual giftings and access to a realm unseen. There is a very big difference between human evolution and psychosis, or human evolution and a mental disability. But we have been taught that if things look a certain way, then they are either too much, they are not enough, or they are wrong, or they are awful. And I will state for myself, I do medicate my ADHD. This is a new journey. I actually have a podcast episode where I talked about this like a couple months ago. I think it's called When Magic Meets Science. I encourage you to go listen to that. Like, there is nothing wrong with calibrating our physical forms in a way that will help our highest selves integrate more peacefully, I'll say, into this human experience that we are here for. But a big part of our journey as starseeds and our journey as neurodivergent people and our journey as souls that would bring people into a place of growth and into a place of fruition is to embrace our weird and to embrace it, and not only embrace it in a, yeah, just as who I am, like roll my eyes, shrug my shoulders and, just whatever, but love it. Be proud of it. Shine from the rooftops with it. And don't hide it. Don't be afraid of it. Like, one of the biggest blessings that I have by not hiding my spiritual gifts, by not hiding that I can see auras, by not hiding that I can speak to animals and that I can speak to plants and that I can see beings in other dimensions and I can connect to fairies and dragons and all of this stuff. I have not only manifested and called in friendships and partnerships and even significant others that also have those giftings. I am seeing those giftings being embraced by family members and by those who are closest to me that I never thought I would ever see this with, or that I hoped but didn't know if it could take place. Like, this is something that when you begin to embrace yourself for who you are, the impact is instrumental and is monumental and is huge. And it might not even be something that you see. As an example, I wrote my book, Power Within Us, this link in the bio, but it talks about going from my own personal journey of codependent, conditioned, religious leader in a church into the spirituality minded person that I am today, into somebody who took my gifts and no longer was going to hide them, no longer going to hide the fact that I have psychic abilities, no longer going to hide the fact that I see things that other people can't see, no longer going to hide the fact that I hear voices and talk to beings that other people can't see or hear, but yet I have tangible evidence that those things are taking place and that they are here on this basis. Like, it's one of those situations where we are conditioned not to give in to this magic. We are conditioned not to give in to the stuff. And when I wrote this book, chapter 2 is a hard read. And when I say that, it's because I was hinting and speaking and implying that I was about to give this deep secret of myself, this deep emotional aspect of myself. And it's where I segue into what I believe now from what I used to believe. And writing that chapter was like pulling myself out of a mud pit. It was like pulling myself out of tar. And it was hard. It genuinely was hard. But I also knew it was what I needed to do. It was a big part of who I am. And as many times as I reread that, I couldn't change it. Like, I could never get that feeling to go away or to have it flow more openly. But I remember telling a couple friends that I feel like this book, it's going to find the right people for who it's meant to find, and it is going to change lives. It is a Kundalini activation book. It is a book that will activate your spiritual gifts. And if you are neurodivergent, if you are someone who has spiritual giftings or spiritual gifts, which that is actually, we're talking about what are spiritual gifts next week. If you are somebody who has spiritual giftings, this book will activate those. This book will bring those to the forefront. That is part of my gifting. That was the point of this. But I did not feel like I was meant to have a publicist, that I was meant to do a bunch of advertising, that I was meant to do any of this stuff yet. I'm not going to say that I'm never going to do it, but part of that is because I knew that what I was meant to do and who I was meant to reach, I already have soul contracts for, and those contracts are going to reach there and they are going to be there. But it was more for myself, to embrace myself as extraordinary and be okay with that. And I still get imposter syndrome. I still get, well, I'm not doing as well as this person, so maybe I'm not as good. I have to meet this standard in order to make a difference. I have to do this. I have to do that. And I shared about this 2 episodes ago. I shared about it in the dreams episode, like in our dreams and like breaking down our dreams and stuff. My guides came to me in a dream and spoke very, very clearly that I needed to stop comparing and trying to be in the energy of other people and what they were birthing. And what I needed to do was focus on myself, focus on my own dreams, focus on my own fruition, focus on my own journey. And that in that time, everything else was automatically going to flow and everything else was automatically going to be, because I was allowing myself permission to be who I was meant to be. I am who I am. And if that sounds familiar, that's because that's from the Bible. Like the Creator himself spoke that. I am who I am. Jesus, I am who I am. Myself, I am who I am. I am Devin Brown. There are a lot of spiritual activists and spiritual leaders and social media influencers that have made their names like I am, and then they have their name, or they have started putting their spiritual names, because we all have a spiritual name like up in the astral that is not your given name here on earth. And they have begun embracing those things because they are who they are. And every single one of us have a contract of certain people that we are meant to meet. Every single one of us have a contract of certain people that we are meant to influence. And you can only reach specific people. And I don't mean that in a, oh, well, you'll never be good enough. I mean it in a very opposite way. There are certain people out there that will only listen to you. Therefore, only you can reach certain people. I want you to hear how that inflection, how the way that I said that changed. Only you can reach certain people, or you can only reach certain people. Like, there's two different ways that you can read that. It's saying the same thing with words, same words, different sentence, one word difference, you know, but really the message in and of itself is completely different. It is completely separate from itself. And that is your truth, my friends. Only you can reach certain people. Only you are capable of pouring into others in a certain way, in a tangible way, in a beautiful way. And we are here to embrace ourselves, to love ourselves for who we are. But here's a big part of that. A lot of you guys, you don't even actually know who you are. I know I thought I did. I know that I sat there with myself and truly, truly believed that my beliefs, that my choices were my own. But when I dove into it, they weren't. They were the things that I had been told that I was meant to do, the things that I had been told that I had to do, the things that I had been told were correct in the right way, the things I had been told and taught was what led to success, the things I had been told and taught was how I was going to grow and how I was going to mold and how I was going to manifest. Those things were there. And a lot of you are too scared to take the steps it takes in order to manifest and move forward into fully embracing yourself as extraordinary, because you have been taught and told your whole life that you're not good enough, that you're not enough, that you need to change, that you have to transition, that you need to mold in, you need to fit in, don't stand out, don't do all this stuff, like everything like that. So you must take a moment to remind yourself just how beautiful you are and fully embrace that. Part of knowing ourselves is spending time alone. Part of knowing and finding our weird is by not thinking that when other people choose to step outside of our presence or to go a different direction, that there is something wrong with us, because that is not the case. I have now walked away from many relationships, but I can tell you with 100% certainty, 3 years ago, I had never walked away from a single relationship. I was giving to everyone, pouring into everyone. And this was something I had to unlearn. This was something I needed to realize, was that I was allowed to be different. I was allowed to have boundaries. I was allowed to be extraordinary. I was allowed to love and to laugh. And those people that would poke fun of me, those people that would shake their heads in disbelief, those people that disagreed, those people that truly felt as if I had gone insane, were just no longer of the vibration to have everyday occurrence in my life. They were no longer of the vibration to pull me up. Rather, they would tear me down. And I know I'm going to school to be a therapist. Like, I understand and fully recognize that I am going to be meeting with people who need help pulling themselves up. I worked with a trauma specialist for years in order to pull myself up out of the pit that I had dug for 35 years. Like, I genuinely understand sometimes we need people to lift us up, but there is a difference between the codependent mindset of, this is my job, this is my responsibility, this is how I am of value to other people, versus looking at yourself and knowing already that you are extraordinary. And some of us say, well, how can I be extraordinary if everybody leaves me? How can I be extraordinary if no one stays? How can I be extraordinary if I'm not good enough? And I can tell you guys, I went through this. I went through this on a very big level. And I realized up until probably about 7 months ago, every single relationship I had ever had, I felt like I had been abandoned by in one way, shape, or form. Even with friendships. Like, even if it was just like an emotional abandonment or a too muchness, I'm going to set you aside until I can deal with you. Like, I had felt abandoned by every single relationship I had ever had. And it got to a point where I recognized, but I am myself. I'm with myself. So where am I abandoning myself so that I can say that I will never abandon myself again? And therefore, I will change the trajectory of this, and I will now form relationships that are not based on abandonment, but based on growth, that are not based on a different type of connectivity, but on just being true to myself and loving myself and embracing myself as extraordinary. And when I did that, when I fully moved forward and blended forward into that, something amazing happened. And I began to love myself. And as I began to love myself, I called in two types of relationships. I called in those who hated themselves, who hate seeing people happy and hate seeing people embrace themselves. And I learned to set boundaries and protect my space, therefore not abandoning myself anymore. And then I called in those who also loved themselves and wanted to be in my circle as we loved each other and continued to love ourselves and each other. And when you reach that type of friend group, when you reach that type of relationship group, when you reach that level of intimacy on a physical 3D level, like tangible relationships in everyday life, nothing is ever going to be too much for you. But you have to reach that point for yourself first. You have to reach that point of embracing yourself and your weird, your unordinary, your quirkiness, your goofiness, your mental disability, your whatever it is, as extraordinary and as a part of yourself, and learning to love every single version and every single part of yourself for who you are. And when you do that, just watch the magic unfold. And I can't wait to hear how this resonates with you. That being said, I love connecting with you all. I have my Quantum Circle open. This is a mentorship program that we do. $34 or $39 a month. You end up getting access to my activations library where we do meditative, self-healing, Reiki treatments like you listen. They're between 10 and 20 minutes long. There's all sorts of different ones depending on what you're looking for and depending on what it is that you want. We add a new one every month. We do energy updates weekly at a minimum, plus tarot card reading for the focus and what the guides want to speak to us. So come join me. We also have a great group chat that you can access and utilize. And you're able to message me privately, and we're also able to go back and forth. I am also accepting podcast sponsors, $3 a month, and we can keep this ad-free if possible. So knock on wood. Anyways, I hope everyone has a happy Monday. Next week, we are going to be diving into what are the spiritual gifts. This one's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode as it's more of a breakdown, because the following week, then we're going to be talking about how to access our spiritual gifts. So if there's anything you ever would like me to talk about, shoot me a message, email to theawakenedsouls@gmail.com. And I hope you guys have a happy Monday.